Hello again. It's Kent in my unfinished basement. I still don't have a decent backdrop to use. Um, this is my first time making a video since we had our second child, so I'm trying to just get back in the saddle and put anything out there. I'm really trying to let the quote that I heard from Gary Vee drive me, as we all should, of course. But Gary Vee, at, in some way, shape, or form, says document, don't create. Um, and if you've ever seen TikTok, anything, that's pretty much what's going on there. um, there are a lot of talented people on TikTok, but there's also gobs and gobs of nothingness. And so, yeah, I really just want to kind of free form, get my thoughts out there. I have talked to a few people about getting on the podcast slash kind of a live show. So I am very excited to get some other people with some good slash better opinions than my own. Um, but yeah, things have kind of stagnated recently, so I wanted to just kind of get anything out there. So yeah, thanks for watching this. If you are, it's pretty raw. I I did want to go into a little bit more of kind of my vision for what it is I'm doing here. Um, I As I said on one of my previous videos, I want to platform people. I want people to be heard instead of trying to shut people down. I want open conversation rather than the gotcha kind of culture of Twitter, especially, but also very much prevalent on Facebook. Um, I've had a lot of conversations with my dad where he feels kind of like I do, where we want to engage with people on Facebook, people we know, and Facebook is a great opportunity to do that. But just the nature of Facebook and Twitter and social media in general is so um, kind of discouraging to that. You can get into a good conversation potentially or a good thread, and then somebody, you know, dive bombs it and throws in something completely unrelated, and then you either kind of have to ignore them or it just gets out of hand. And so to really have kind of a long form conversation, and not even necessarily that long form, but just longer and more direct, with someone potentially, who you know seeking out people who do disagree with me, and I know they do. But yeah, just again, kind of the driver for this is, in the U.S. we live in a government that's supposed to be by the people for the people. The only qualifiers we have from many of our elected officials are that they are elected. There's no qualification, there's age limits and term limits and stuff like that, but there you don't have to have a doctorate in being the president to become the president. Um, and that is so evident, I think, for a lot of these of elected officials, lifer politician types. Um, and yet these are people who are making decisions that affect us on a day-to-day basis, and to me, in an increasing fashion, they're involved with our day-to-day lives. And so I want to participate in that national discussion. I want to participate in that discussion as it pertains to the state of Nebraska, and I'm in Lancaster County. I want to have those local conversations. Um, so the purview can really be kind of anything worldwide, but I want the folks that I'm discussing with to be people I know, and do have a relationship with, not just, at some point I would love to get talking heads or experts or whomever, to get their view too, but I want to start small and work my way out. Um, and yeah, just kind of let those conversations drive things. I also will probably do some soliloquizing. I always thought that was a real word. That's probably not a real word. Um, I'll probably go on some rants here and there. Uh, but again, the point being to stir up questions rather than to answer them my way. That's what a pundit does, and pundits are great. I consume lots of punditry. Um, People who I agree with me, usually on some point, and I want to consume their viewpoint because it makes me feel right. Um, and probably more than I care to admit. I try to read some stuff that's contrary to my opinion, especially if I know someone who espouses those positions. But yeah, I want to go into the political side here, in the short time I have, and just kind of talk through the federal government making decisions for 330 million people that have a vast array of differing opinions, and really, um, you know, I won't, I probably won't try and hide my opinion. I am a libertarian, to boil it down to something. And I really think the Libertarian Party could could be something cool if they would decide on what they are. Their branding is just terrible. I think um, there needs to be um, some trust there, that people will start to vote them into positions, vote us, I should say, into positions that actually matter. But yeah, going back to this whole idea of federal government, I mean, um, even as I understand the founding of the country, um, the federal government was really created as a compact of the states. Um, and the states were really supposed to be the sovereign entities that came together in the common defense, and specifically the 10th Amendment says anything that's not specifically granted by the Constitution of the United States is to be left to the states or to the people. And so, just getting into, well, why, you know, what is this supposed to be the scope of the federal government? Is it's supposed to um, do the things where we require a monopoly, like national defense is an easy one there. Um, but just theoretically speaking, how did we get away from that is an interesting conversation. But I want that better question to be, why, who decides? Thomas Sowell uses that question a lot. Not what is the decision. We've had decisions handed down to us, in Supreme Court cases or federal laws, or even regulations from federal entities. But my question that I think is I've boiled down to as being a better question is who decides. And a lot of a growing number of things, in my view, are being decided by the federal government. And it's interesting, even coming at it as a fairly new husband as well. You know, I've been married now for 5 years, and um, you learn a lot about kind of conflict resolution in that. And one thing that has just stuck out like a sore thumb in a lot of our political debates is that we want some overhead top down decision to say who's right and who's the winner. You know, if it's some, you know, abortion is an extremely divisive issue. And growing up, you know, conservative Christian, that's definitely what we were cheering for. And I know a lot of people want that. And I think there are good arguments for a top down decision for that. Um, but my question then is, you know, we come back to who decides and why, you know, why should that be a top down decision from the federal government? You know, there are some, I don't want to get into abortion specifically, but that is an example of something that's very polarizing, a very polarizing issue. And so to me, it seems like there's a lot of appeal to um, kind of a judge or a referee to just kind of say, okay, we're going to rule on who's right, and then you know, there's that's the decision. We know who won, um, but being in a marriage, you know, yeah, one person might be right, um, but if you win, you still have to live with that decision. And if you didn't convince the other side, um, then you're really kind of stuck. You know, you might have to obey the law, obey the decision that you both compromised on, um, but it isn't necessarily the moral victory I think a lot of people want. And I think, you know, it really leads to more questions to me, in terms of what's allowed. Anyway, um, before I get too rambly on that subject, I love that question of who decides. I think in a lot of these cases, I think there's just kind of a foregone conclusion that it's the federal government that's going to decide these things. And I really want people to think about that before they give the federal government a ton of power to make these decisions and enforce them on literally everyone. Um, I I think we're seeing some interesting developments. You know, I think gay marriage was one of these where it kind of started more grassroots, and more and more states were adopting um, gay marriage as kind of a policy, which I'd love to go into that as well because I have a lot of questions about what that even means, and you know, what have we learned since Obergefell Hodge. We have the marijuana debates, where you have these states that are saying, yeah, look, um, we want marijuana to be legal, not just medical marijuana, but any recreational marijuana. And the federal government is still takes the position that that's illegal. And you know, it really gets down to to the question of who decides. You know, uh, it leads to some tricky outcomes in terms of enforcement because, you know, maybe state officials won't prosecute a marijuana charge, for example, but federal entities would. So yeah, it leads to some sticky situations. I know even I experienced a little bit in the banking side as well. That, you know, even in states where it's legal, banks, there's still a federal mandate there. And so, you know, I think it's like banks won't lend to marijuana based institutions because of the FDIC won't insure it because it's a federal um, corporation, right? FDIC. I'll have to ask Zach. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, there's so much nuance to these things. There are a lot of people that know so much more than I do. But really, what I want to drive at is how do we live together? You know, a lot of people are talking about the red states and the blue states and the urban areas and the rural areas are just growing apart at such a fast rate. How do we unite? How do we, you know, agree to disagree on some of these things? And, you know, is breaking up the country really what we need to do um, to kind of release some of this pressure that's built up? Um, so yeah, that's what I'm thinking about right now. I don't know that there's anything I want to add. Sorry if you've watched this far. I'm sorry for the roughness of the video. I didn't plan anything in advance. I just want to get some stuff out there. Um, Give me feedback. I'm going to post this on YouTube and Facebook. And yeah, give me feedback again. I'm starting small. I want to hear. I want to have something that's living. You know, I don't want this to be something, at least at first, that's huge and you know I don't know everybody who's watching or commenting. I want this to be something that can be very interactive. Um, and that said, if you have good ideas or you think you have good ideas, but you don't want anyone to ever know them because you think that no one cares, you're the kind of person I want to talk to as well. Because there are a lot of discussions that just get trolled and shut down, and yeah, there's so many topics where you know all these opinions exist in the world to some extent, and they got to find their right place at some point. And yeah, we don't necessarily need to even be friends, but with people who have extreme differing viewpoints, we don't need to be friends with them, but can we not bomb each other? Let's start there and see if we can work our way back. So yeah, that's again, that's what's on my mind. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.